Good evening, Borough fans. What do you say to this, eh? What do you say to this? The playoff dream is over. You know, looking back at the game, I mean, it was just awful. It was just an awful game. You know, it was filled with controversial decisions. It was filled with soft tackles. Borough got hammered with yellow cards. Southampton walked away with two, and Borough got half the squad booked. And most of the challenges that Borough got booked for were pretty much exactly the same on Southampton's side. Yet we walk away with a booking and they didn't. But that's just the EFL stiffing it to Borough as per usual. So nothing new there. We knew Southampton having home advantage for the second leg would be a great advantage to them. But to be honest, I didn't see much from the Southampton fans. They were pretty quiet all game. Even when that second goal went in, and they were celebrating, it was still pretty quiet. So I mean, I'm expecting a lot of slander on the back of this podcast. So I'm expecting a lot of Southampton fans to be in the comments calling me salty or, kicking back at Borough for the shithousery that we did with Coventry at the start of the season. But I mean, look at where Coventry are to where we are. Coventry went up and had a really strong squad, and as the saying goes, Borough get screwed over. It just Southampton. You can say we deserve this. Everything we've done this season, but when you look at our season, this season especially, losing Morgan Whittaker very early on, was out for a few months. Losing Hayden Hackney, who's probably one of, if not our most crucial player. I mean, we've been plagued with injuries like we are every season. I mean, we've had to play players out of position to cover lack of squad depth. We've brought in players that just haven't worked. Our manager left after 4 months at the club. We've been through 2 managers. You've had 1 season under 1 manager. You've had an entire season under 1 manager. So we've had to adapt to separate play styles and all of this stuff. So you can say we deserve to have lost and to stay in the Championship. But do you really deserve to be in the Prem? No. You were terrible last season in the Prem and you're consistently relegated. So you're just an up and down club. At least we have something to prove and something to fight for. You're just going to come down next season if you beat Hull. And we know you cheat. You are cheats, You admitted to cheating. For everybody saying, oh, but that spy we sent over or that went over may have represented our club, but, he had no impact on anything. But he did, He went down to Middlesbrough. Sorry, up to Middlesbrough. He went up to Borough, to get you information ahead of the first leg of a playoff game. That's oddly suspicious, that time and that. And it just is what it is. I hope the EFL charge Southampton, but knowing the EFL and knowing how things work, especially with Borough and with how the Championship goes, Southampton will have played Hull in the final, and will of course, probably have been promoted to the Premier League, and they'd be sat in the Premier League with nothing but a tiny little fine, because that's how the EFL works. What do I think should happen? I think Hull should be promoted automatically. I don't see a reality where Middlesbrough get to play Hull in the final. I think if it comes down to it, they should just promote Hull and Southampton stay in the Championship. We don't have a playoff final. Hull just get automatically promoted. I think that's the fairest way of doing it. some people will say, Southampton getting a fine just like Leeds, but you've got to remember, Leeds, one, did it before the rule was actually put in place, and two, didn't do it on a game of this magnitude. They didn't do it on a first leg of a playoff semi-final. Theirs was just a normal match day. So yours is a lot more severe. And like I said with the first point, Leeds did it before the rule was put in place. So the fact the rule is there and you still broke it, it should be more severe. But of course, Southampton fans, not reading into things and don't look up the facts. They go, oh, well, Leeds did it, so we'll just get a fine. Anyway, it's just annoying. Saints fans, get in the comments, call me shithousery, call me salty, call me whatever you want. This is a Borough podcast, and if you're not here to support the Borough, I really couldn't give a shit about your opinion, to be honest. But at the end of the day, it is one of them things we've just got to suck up as Borough fans. Were there times we could have gone ahead? Absolutely. I think Hellberg made a lot of mistakes bringing on subs at the wrong times. Whittaker looked exhausted after the first half, and yet he kept him on for the full 120. So I don't know what that was about. Yeah. He kept him on for the full game. It's just stupid. Absolutely stupid. But it is what it is. I mean, when Ronnie McGrew scored that goal to begin with, I was absolutely ecstatic. Seeing that ball go in, it was like, we've got a goal advantage here. You remember that first leg, we should have been up 4 or 5-0, and then carried that into this game, we would have won on aggregate, no problem. But of course, because we didn't execute, because we didn't finish, it came back to bite us on the ass. And I already know what Southampton fans are going to say, with regards to, well, we got 2 goals, we won the game fair and square. You didn't win the game fair and square. That was the most biased bull crap of refereeing I think I've ever seen in a championship game. It was just disgraceful. And I'm not saying it purely on Southampton. Borough did have a few decisions go their way where even I was like, that shouldn't have been given. But, I mean, Southampton's ball boy holding onto the ball, wasting time. Southampton then came over and acted like Borough did something wrong, even though it was their ball boy that was withholding the ball from our players. Eckhart going off at Hellberg, he wasn't just shouting at him, he did push him, he did actually make contact with Hellberg. He should have been booked for that, and he wasn't. Strelic goes down within the first few minutes, Southampton player stands on his foot, it's not given, it's not a penalty. Ronnie McGrew does the same thing a little bit later, he gets a yellow card for it. He gets booked, they get a foul. So explain to me why the exact same foul happens on David Strelic, and yet the player gets away scot-free, and yet when a Borough player does it, the exact same tackle, Ronnie McGrew gets a yellow. It's bullshit. And Callum Britton, I feel bad for Callum Britton, because Callum Britton so many times down that right hand side made clean tackles and the referee just kept giving every single one. It's disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful how blind the referees are. And you'll always get commentators and people around the sports industry saying, referees are just people, they will make mistakes. I'm okay with that. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. That game was full of mistakes. I don't think there was one decision that actually went the right way. Borough were denied 2 handballs and a penalty which just speaks volumes of how this game went. And you can't deny Southampton because they were clear as day handballs. It was just absolutely shocking, absolutely fucking shocking, this game. I mean, the audacity to give Southampton a 7.4 and Borough a 6.9. I mean, if anything, they were more evenly matched. I mean, I'm looking at that. Cienza got a 6.7. Cienza played 83 minutes and he was injured from the first half. I've got to give plaudits to Cienza. I thought he played really well even though he got an injury. You know, so plaudits to Cienza. I don't know why he's been given such a low rating. As for the rest of the team, Peretz is a good keeper. You know, we knew he'd be good. Apart from that little bit with Tommy Conway, where literally all Tommy did was like brush his face and he fell to the floor, acting like Tommy Conway just stepped on his bollocks. You know, he did all right. Their defence, Brian Hardwood Bellis and Wood did okay. Didn't see anything special. Ryan Manning for me was their man of the match. Without Ryan Manning, we would have easily beaten you. Ryan Manning kept you in that game the entire time, so props to Ryan for keeping you in the game. Him definitely was your man of the match. Yander was a decent midfielder, you know. He did a decent job. I was a little bit surprised to see Flynn Downs not back in the 11, but they brought in Shea Charles, of course, who gave the delivery blow that saw Borough lose. He crossed that in. He didn't take a shot. He crossed that in, and he knows he crossed it in. Solbrin didn't make an effort to go for the ball. I don't know why. He didn't even shift his feet or nothing. Dale Fry comes over to like header it, and he just misjudges it. And Luke Ayling's just stood there watching the ball go in the back of the net. Matsuki went down so many times. He just loved the floor. You know, he made no kind of effort. You know, he was probably one of the worst players on the pitch. Azaz, you know, former Borough, he played well. He had a decent game. I'm not going to dispute that. Do I think Borough were right to let him go? Yes. You know, I think Azaz played really well in the Man City game, even though they ended up losing that game. I thought when I watched that game and I saw Finn Azaz play and I saw his goal, I was like, you know, Finn's really picked something up here with Southampton. And Stewart, I think, played like every other average striker. Then we get into the Borough ratings, and I can already tell you from the front line, this is very fucking harsh. But starting goal, we saw Bryn. He made some really good saves, made some very vital saves, particularly towards the end. I saw a few people saying we should sell him. You know, he's not that good. You've got to remember, he's still young. I think he's like 22, 23, Solbrin? He's 25, sorry. A little bit older than I thought. 25, he's still a young keeper. You know, he's from our academy. You know, he's homegrown talent. I wouldn't say sell him. I'd probably keep him, though, as a backup and maybe rotate him. You've got to remember, McLaughlin and Wildsmith are both on loan, so, you know, maybe bringing in a better keeper is a good idea, but I wouldn't sell him. Malander played well. I thought he played really well. Dale Fry, to give him a 6.9 is a bit harsh. I'd probably give him like a 7.2, 7.3. I thought he played quite well. He definitely got tired towards the end, and I was surprised we didn't sub him off. But you know, he did a decent job. Ayling, to give Ayling a 6.2, without even watching the game, he made some dribbles into the midfield in the first half. He was defensively solid. Yes, he lost his head, but it's Bill at the end of the day. It's been like that since he was playing at Leeds. you know. And to be honest, he had all the more reason to. As I said, the officiating, the refereeing in that game was absolutely dreadful. So, I mean, to give him a 6.2 is quite unfair, considering he probably played better than pretty much the entire Southampton defence, other than Ryan Manning. Tiggs and Britton both had pretty decent games. Britton, like I said, I think he just got done by very harshly. You know, a lot of his tackles weren't fouls. He won the ball a lot, and he was just, the referee was just giving pretty much everything. So I've liked him ever since we signed him. I think he's been really good. He did go a little bit off at first, but at the start of the season, I was like, yeah, this guy, we bought him from Blackburn as one of the best right backs in the league, and I think other than Van Erwijk, he's still the best right back in the league. Aidan Morris had a decent game. He fell over a few times, but he seems to be doing that a lot lately. A few times I was like, shoot. He got in like really good areas and he just didn't shoot. So I would have liked to have seen Aidan Morris score a goal, but it's a shame it didn't happen. Brian McGree, of course, played really well. He got tired yet again towards like the midway between like half time and the 90th minute. So, but his yellow card wasn't deserved, and his goal was brilliant. It gave us faith, which we really needed going into this second leg. Tommy Conway with a 6.8. Honestly, I don't know why I bother looking at FotMob. I mean, the ratings for Borough are always wrong. I think Tommy played really well. Really, really well. He got forward well. He was just unlucky with his injury. Not quite sure what happened. I think he just got a muscle strain or something. But when he went down, I wasn't too happy when he went down, because I just knew it would be a major loss for us. For someone who has his level of commitment, his level of passion and dedication, a lot of fans don't like him because he can't finish. They think his end product is pretty poor. But Kim's played him on the left wing, and I think that's where he plays best. I did like him in the 10, but I think out on the wing, he uses his pace, he cuts inside, he crosses the ball in. I think he does a really good job. So, well done, Tommy. I'm always a big advocate for Tommy, so a little bit biased towards that one, but I think he played really well, and I hope he's okay, because I really want him. I really want him next season to just pull something out of the bag. Whittaker got tired very early on. He should have been taken off, and he wasn't. I would have played Sarmiento on that right hand side. A little bit trickery towards Ryan Manning. A little bit more kind of a threat. Sarmiento kind of offers that. But I think Morgan Whittaker overall had a pretty poor game, which is a bit disappointing. Because we definitely could have done with some goals today, and he definitely would have been somebody to bring them. And Strelic, I thought Strelic played absolutely awfully. There were so many times where he got the ball and he couldn't turn, or he just ran randomly in random spaces. He didn't occupy space very well. He didn't look like a threat at all. So, a bit disappointing from Strelic today. As we look into the subs, we brought on Alan Brown. I love Alan Brown, man. Alan Brown and Tommy Conway. Phenomenal. I loved Alan Brown. So I was very happy when he came on. He had a decent game. Leo, I don't know why we brought Leo on. Honestly, just like Strelic, he just couldn't seem to put two and two together. There was a time in the second half where Callum Britton's on the overlap. Leo Caston's running in. All he has to do is lay it off, and for some reason he just gets his feet backwards. A bit like Della. He looked like Della before we sent him on loan to Bristol, and he just couldn't figure out which foot was which, to to pass the ball over to Callum, and he lost the ball. So a bit disappointing with that, Theo. But it's your first season. You've only had January really to get into the team and stuff. And I thought Sarmiento played quite average, to be honest. But then again, how much of an impact are you going to make in the 106th minute? And then, of course, Hansen in the 119th, which is even worse. What can we expect from an impact like that? We should have made changes before going into extra time. Flynn Downs came on for Southampton, played okay, played a decent game. I thought he should have started, but of course they just put Charles back in rotation. Larin, the less said about Larin, the better. To be honest, I thought he was just a bully. He was just a big presence in the box. Nothing more than that. I mean, he didn't look like he offered Southampton anything. He's got a mouth on him, I know that. And Edozie was just unlucky. He landed awkwardly on his shoulder. As you can see there, he came on in the 85th, left on the 119th. He landed awkwardly on his shoulder. I think with a one-on-one with Callum Britton. Just unlucky for Edozie. Wellington came on to replace him, and then Cameron Bragg came on as well. Can't say I noticed too much about either of them. With only a few minutes left to go. I just don't really know what to say. I'm just really disappointed in how this game went. I'm fuming that Hayden Hackney just sat on the bench. He didn't look injured. We've been sceptical as a club about Hayden's condition for a while, pretty much since his injury. Look, nothing more than a muscle strain, and yet he's been out for weeks. It just seems too suspicious, really, that Hayden has just suffered such a minor injury, and yet when we need him most, he's been can't play. And now, of course, we've lost playoffs, and we're going to be in the Championship. Highly likely that he will move on to those bigger clubs that he has been linked with, the likes of Brighton, Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Coventry, those teams. Man United potentially. I know that Man United are looking at Ederson, the Serie A midfielder. To be honest, Ederson, Bruno Fernandes, Hayden Hackney could be a deadly midfield, that. But yeah, a little bit disappointed not to have Hackney play for us. We definitely could have used his creativity, his drive and his passion in the midfield. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, we've just kind of take the merits away from the game. We played for 120 minutes, which is more than most teams can say. Southampton can say they dominated us, but we all know that's not true. Without Ryan Manning and without the referee and all the officials on your team, you just wouldn't have been as effective, as you were today. But it's just one of them things. You kind of just have to put it in your rearview mirror. Hope we do well next season. See what Kim Helberg has planned. Who stays, who goes. Who do we bring in? And like I said, just hope for the best next season. That's all I've got to say, really. This is obviously the last episode of the season. We probably won't resume until the season starts, so probably won't have anything through pre-season. But we'll probably do a pod before the season starts, before the first match day, just to kind of get our thoughts over the transfers and any departures and stuff. And then we'll talk about the match that'll be upcoming. Then we'll of course go into the new season fresh, and hopefully on another good run like we did this season. But of course, for those that don't know, I will be moving. I am actually moving today. I am moving up to Scotland to start the next chapter of my life. I will still be supporting the borough, so I will be supporting the borough from the Scottish Highlands, and of course I will be, hopefully, still recording these podcasts for you. So the Riverside Review still continues, even though we are leaving Teesside. But I hope you have enjoyed Up the Borough as per usual, and let's bring on next season.